Ukraine was they, them as fuck. And now look at what's going on. Look at what's going on in Ukraine. It's no longer woke. Bring it back. Let's get right into the news. Senator Rubio arrives overseas for talks to end the Russia-Ukraine war. As you guys know, there's a Munich Security Conference and so much happening on that side of the world. Donald Trump has decided finally to end the war in Ukraine. And how is he going to end it? Well, that is a little bit confusing for everyone, myself included. Now, of course, the dynamic for Ukraine, the die was cast, and not Senator Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio, I apologize. The dynamic for Ukraine was always, what America says goes, even though we kind of made it seem like we care about Ukrainian autonomy. That was never really the case. And Donald Trump, once again, doing the damn thing and saying the quiet part out loud. All right. Let's take a look at what he's going to do.
Diplomacy that could redraw Ukraine's borders kicks into high gear. Russia is trying to show it has the upper hand, firing around 150 drones at Ukraine overnight, according to the Ukrainian military. Russia and Ukraine are each trying to show dominance and take as much territory as they can before a peace deal that President Trump insists both sides want. Today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived in Saudi Arabia to meet the Russian side. On Sunday, President Trump said he'll be joining the process soon, meeting directly with Russian President Vladimir Putin.
I think he wants to end it, and they want to end it fast. Both of them. And Zelensky wants to end it too.
President Zelensky won't be attending the talks in Saudi Arabia, according to his office, but he is nearby in the United Arab Emirates on what officials described as a previously scheduled trip to boost humanitarian support for Ukraine. President Zelensky told NBC's Kristen Welker Ukraine can't be cut out of negotiations for a peace settlement that could see Ukraine surrender large amounts of territory currently occupied by Russian troops.
Have you been given any assurances that Ukraine will have an equal seat at the negotiating table?
So I will never accept any decisions between the United States and Russia about Ukraine.
In a basement bunker in the Ukrainian city of Kherson this morning, children gather for a small party organized by volunteers. It's a Valentine's Day celebration to lift their spirits. The city is under constant Russian attack. After 3 years of war, many Ukrainians want to return to normal life, but they don't want their fate to be decided for them by President Trump.
Like kind of like games behind our backs, and we don't like it because we don't understand that.
Feels like there are negotiations happening in private and that your future is being determined
Under a big question.
under a big question mark.
For now, Europe is being effectively...
That's what happens when USAID makes Ukraine woke. Everybody got blue hair. That's it. Zelensky said Ukraine will not accept any peace deal if they're not part of the talks, and yet the U.S. is still going to talk to Russia and leave Ukraine in the dust. At this point, I just want my uncle out of the country finally when the war eventually ends. Yeah, Ukraine is woke because of USAID. As you can tell, because of the blue hair. That was a wig, Hasan. I know, man. I'm joking. Oh my God.
Cut out of this negotiation process, with European officials meeting today in Paris for what are, in practice, consultations among themselves.
The major issue here is, I'll explain it to you with a previous example of what Pete Hegseth did. Pete Hegseth came out and said, NATO is out of the question. Now, of course, if you've been following the situation closely, if you've been following the dynamic closely, you already knew that NATO was officially always out of the question for Ukraine. They just kind of dangled it as a way to claim that could potentially happen sometime in the future, but it was always, of course, out of the question for them, right? But the reason why it is a misstep to come out and just say, NATO's out of the question, what are you talking about? Is because if you are going into the negotiations You're not supposed to say that out loud before the negotiations start, because there's no reason to concede to the other side's framework before the negotiations even start. Art of the deal, baby. Donald Trump should know this better than anybody else. Okay? So on the aesthetic front, or on the optics front, I think that's one of the major issues that people have with the way that the Trump administration does stuff. They just don't try to massage the narrative in any way, shape, or form. They don't try to make this as appealing to all parties involved in any way, shape, or form. They have a pretty strict might is right power dynamic understanding of the world. And they just go into it thinking, okay, well, you know, we're going to obviously make concessions, and it doesn't really matter what Ukraine's opinions are, what Ukrainians' opinions are, right? So that's it. Like, that's it. That's all this is. And the same principle holds for saying Ukraine is not going to be a part of these talks, or rather cutting Ukraine out of the talks and simply going to Russia and talking to Russia directly. Ultimately, yes, the United States and Russia are engaging in a proxy war in Ukraine. This is correct. This is what is happening, okay? A lot of Ukrainians have died as a consequence of this. In order to end this endless war, trench warfare, you know, hundreds of thousands of people dying, you have to talk to Russia. That part of the equation is not wrong. That is actually the correct thing to do. That is the appropriate approach. But once again, optically speaking, you're basically telling Ukraine, yeah, you're done. You're done. We're undermining you openly, outwardly, okay? We are not going to listen to your demands. That was the major difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. In terms of foreign policy, it's not that different. When Zelensky demanded when Zelensky demanded NATO air forces, like NATO state air forces, to create a no-flight zone over Ukrainian airspace, of course, America said, no, that's ridiculous. We're not going to do that. The reason for why was because, obviously, if they were to do that, that would mean all these nuclear powers would be going to direct war with one another, right? That was a demand that Ukraine made, understandably, since day one. That was a demand that Biden said no to since day one. But what did the Biden administration do in terms of foreign policy that the Trump administration is not doing right now? They massaged the narrative, okay? They made sure that, you know, people didn't really focus on that side of the equation as much. Okay? People didn't really focus on the fact that this was a Ukrainian demand that America was not listening to, even though the claim overall was that the claim overall from the American side always was, oh, we care about Ukrainian autonomy. They never did. They never truly did. Okay? So that's it. The major difference here is that Donald Trump is actively undermining Ukraine, and perhaps even coming to the negotiations while actively undermining America's ally in the process. And that, in and of itself, is probably not the best possible way to get into the negotiations, even though it is understandable that you are, at the end of the day, supposed to negotiate with Russia.
President Trump said this week he did not say yes when he was asked if he sees Ukraine as an equal member in the peace process. He did say later that Ukraine would have a seat at the table. Have you been given any assurances that Ukraine will have an equal seat at the negotiating table?
So I will never accept any decisions between the United States and Russia about Ukraine. Never. And our people.
The problem with this statement is that, like, one, it's a falsehood. Okay? It's just not correct. Two, it's only going to create more resentment from people who just don't give a shit about Ukraine anyway in the United States of America. Okay? he has to say this. He has to say this. Just like he has to, whether or not he truly cares about Israel or not, has to say, am Israel high? And Israel is the most moral nation on the planet, which ironically, Israel's actions quite literally undermined Ukrainian defense because America's attention entirely shifted to the Middle East all of a sudden. Okay? Like, he is NATO's guy. He has to do this. He has to say this. He has two conflicting motivators here. On the one hand, he has to represent the interest of Ukraine. Also, on the other hand, he has to obviously play ball with America. Azov probably has a gun to his head. I mean, I've long suspected, just shut up when it comes to Ukraine. Your takes on this shit is stupid. Yeah, it's very stupid. You're right. Except virtually everything I've said is currently happening. This is not to say that it is the appropriate decision, okay? It's just that it's what is currently ongoing and what basically happened leading up to this instance, leading up to the Trump negotiation. I don't know why whenever I talk about this stuff, everyone just goes calling him NATO's guy. I mean, what? Yes, it is. Without Western support, without NATO support, without all of the logistics, Ukraine would not have been able to mount a fucking defense against Russia. This is true. What are you talking about? That's not a bad thing. Okay? And yes, of course Ukraine should be at the negotiations table. Are you stupid? Of course he has to be a part of the peace talks, and he most likely will. Okay? I'm not saying that, like, I think you guys misunderstand my position. Of course he has to be a part of the fucking peace talks. It's the responsible party. He is the head of state of the nation that was fucking invaded. That's not that's not, like, the morality of that is clear. We're not having a conversation about that right now. What we're having a conversation about is the actual power dynamic at play. Jesus Christ, I need to hyper qualify everything I say about Ukraine because of like 3 years of USAID backed fucking pro NATO liberals who have constantly flooded the marketplace with Hassan loves Vladimir Putin and loves sucking Vladimir Putin's penis over and over again, that I can't have a normal fucking conversation in terms of analysis of what the fuck is going on without a million different dudes chirping in here. The point is, America doesn't give a fuck about Ukraine and Ukrainian emancipation or Ukrainian interests. That's just the reality, okay? And I said this for years at this point. I don't know why people fail to comprehend that this is not like... When I say that, that's not to be like, and it's awesome that America doesn't care about Ukraine, and it's awesome that Trump is actually undermining Zelensky, okay? That's not my point at all. I'm just simply telling you what is going on. Thank you, Michael from Pennsylvania, for the raid. Hope you had a good stream. Yeah, people still say this. You do love Putin's dong, to be fair. No, I don't. There's never been a point where I have. Why the fuck would I like a KGB agent that was America's own fucking guy? Who is a horrifying kleptocrat? Undermining is a bit of an understatement. Extortion is the best analogy. That my point is, it's not technically different than the way that the Democrats also operated with Ukraine. They just massage the narrative better. That's it. Because American foreign policy at the end of the day is uniparty. Like on the broad scopes, on the broad strokes, sorry, not scopes. On the broad strokes is always going to go in one direction. Okay? Why do people keep saying this shit? You've never been pro-Putin? There are probably a collection of like 10 to 30 million views on YouTube of hundreds of pro-NATO liberals and pro-NATO leftists that have spent the entire Russian invasion of Ukraine basically talking about how I, as the number one leftist commentator, I'm pro-Vladimir Putin and pro-NATO. It's like, it is virtually the same shit with respect to Palestine and Israel. Like, there are a lot of people who, you know, try to make videos saying like, oh, Hasan is a fucking terrorist. These are radical terrorists. It's no different than that. The strategy is at least the same. But in this regard, my anti-NATO position for a lot of people that haven't necessarily done the reading or whatever makes it seem like I'm on the wrong side morally on this in this conversation. Okay? What leftists would there are plenty of campists who do genuinely like Putin, for the record. So the idea that like there aren't people who like Putin on the left or whatever is false. It's not correct. There are people who like Putin. Want to dismiss criticism as people are dumb listening to random Hasan propaganda means you're not listening to your own chatters who have a disagreement with you? No, there are plenty of chatters that I have disagreements with. There's a difference between someone saying, Hasan, you love sucking Vladimir Putin's dick. That's not real criticism. That's just someone who is misguided. Or, Hasan, you just don't know anything about Ukraine. You should just stop talking. That's not criticism. How is that criticism? That's just fucking bad faith bullshit. I like that for you, that seems like it's real criticism, though. Anyway, having said all of that, of course, what Donald Trump is doing is ridiculous. However, I will defend. This is like a Trump handling Korea situation. Opening up the talks to Vladimir Putin is not ridiculous. Okay, that's the other party involved. They are the perpetrators. They are the party that is doing the wrong thing. Having said that, however, that's how state versus state talks occur. There is no way to just simply be like, yeah, we're just never going to talk to Vladimir Putin, which is, once again, something that Joe Biden said over and over again. And I thought that was a wrong thing to say, especially considering that the American State Department did talk to the Russian government. They talked to the Russian government when there was a hostage deal, for example. What? This is not what I or other people that are saying? What? Wait. Chatter. Those are the two comments that I addressed. I didn't read your comment. I don't know why you think that I read your comment and avoided it. Framing this as a war between the U.S. and Russia is just wrong, dude. Ukraine is supported by more than the U.S. I'm sorry, chatter. If you think that this is not almost entirely framed by the United States of America, I don't know how to begin to have this conversation with you. Okay? Bro, I think your understandable anti-imperialist bias is clouding your view of this. Ukraine was invaded and is supported by many countries in and around the EU and NATO, not just the United States. You're framing this as a proxy war between the US and Russia is just not true. You're right. The EU and NATO are totally separate entities from the United States. Specifically, the NATO is a totally separate, autonomous entity. You're right. My bad. I misunderstood the dynamic. I'm being sarcastic, by the way. Of course. This doesn't change the equation at all. This is exactly what I'm saying. Talk to Putin about what? What do you want him to say? Would you consider talking with Hitler during World War II? The conversation, or at least the dynamic here, is entirely different than World War II for one reason and one reason only: nuclear arms. If Hitler had nukes during World War II, the dynamic would also be very different. Okay? That's it. Russia has nukes. America has nukes. NATO nations have nukes. This is the reason why America won't institute a no-fly zone over Ukraine. This is the reason why America won't deploy troops into Ukraine to fight back against the Russian troops that have invaded Ukraine. That's it. Because the alternative to appeasement, as everyone always points to and says, this is just like appeasement, this is just like appeasement, is war. That's it. The alternative to appeasement is war. And at the end of the day, after 3 whole years of doing this, it is clear that either you are going to forcibly conscript younger Ukrainians and potentially eviscerate the remaining generation of Ukrainian men and continue trench warfare in eastern Ukraine, or you're going to have to try and manage the situation to the best of your ability. That's it. So in terms of actually having a conversation with Putin, whether or not he is going to follow through on his end of the bargain, that remains to be seen. Do I believe that Vladimir Putin is going to follow through on the terms and conditions of a ceasefire? I'm not so certain. Okay? He has time and time again shown that he's not necessarily a reliable person. But you know who else is also not a reliable person? Donald fucking Trump, ironically enough. So, they are very similar in that vein. Having said that, however, just like I maintain the same exact position on the ceasefire deal being implemented in Gaza, and then what Donald Trump has done since then, that I warned that he would do, I maintain the same exact position. Ceasefire, especially in the interim, is still going to end up stopping the bloodshed. Okay? Come on, dude. EU has literally given more aid to Ukraine than the US has. You won't get us EU viewers agreeing with you on this one. I think if left to their own devices, the European Union leadership would not, I think that a lot of people are understandably afraid of Russia. Okay? Or in the European Union. But if you think that they didn't want, if you think that they wanted their energy prices to fucking skyrocket because they can no longer use Russian natural gas, I don't know what to tell you. I think that that is unironically causing instability and more chaos, and low key, or maybe high key, causing the far right to gain more momentum. $70 billion from the EU and $310 billion in aid from other countries, leading me to believe that the U.S. may not be as powerful as you're suggesting in this conflict. Okay, we'll see. Maybe you can educate me a little on how the EU is an extension of the U.S. is in supporting Ukraine in defending itself. $70 billion from the EU and $310 billion in aid from other countries, leading me to believe the U.S. may not be as powerful as you're suggesting in this conflict. Okay. Why are we having a conversation about Donald Trump directly having a conversation with Vladimir Putin right now if it's not a significant party, perhaps the most significant party? The answer should be who cares, right? If America is not the most significant party here, the most powerful party here in these talks, then why is this even a story? Why are you worried? Why is Zelensky worried? If the EU in and of itself, and NATO without the United States of America was a significant power player in this regard, or in any global conflict, really, they just would say, all right, well, You know, losing America in this equation is going to be a significant, it's going to be a significant problem, but we can make up for that with our own defense our own defense industry. We will defend Ukraine ourselves, would be the argument here. Because it gives a significant part, no one denies that. What everyone is saying is EU provided more than the US, case closed. Okay. Okay. We'll see.
People, never. And our adults and children and everybody. It can't be so. This is the war in Ukraine against us, and these are our human losses. And we are thankful for all the support, unity between USA, in USA, around Ukraine support, bipartisan unity, bipartisan support. We're thankful for all of this, but...
Sorry, but your takes on EU are L takes. The EU is highly dependent on Russia, and with Putin getting more unreliable, is the right move. You can discuss it with me. But as someone from the EU, you're not understanding the EU version of this. Guys, the way I see it is nation states do not operate on the boundaries of morality. Okay? They operate on cold, hard data. They operate on cold, hard material interests. Okay? That's it. Is there real fear about Russian-caused instability in especially the Baltic states and all around the world, really? Because Russia's actions in Ukraine do undermine America's power status. And if all of these countries have, for many, many years, have comfortably existed under the security blanket of America, and all of a sudden someone is not playing ball and doing stuff that America clearly does not like, yes, that presents a threat to the established order. This is a very real fear. Okay? Having said that, however, if you think that European leaders across the board are super excited at the prospect of not using cheaper Russian gas, for example, and are perfectly fine with using American gas, and it's not something that it's not something that like was forced upon them by the United States of America. While the EU nations are still indirectly buying gas from Russia, it's just more expensive because they have to purchase it from a middleman, usually India. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's not just it's energy that they get from India across the in an effort to avoid sanctions. Do EU frogs like pretending being important or something? Your time is gone, dog. Just accept it and move on. Some people just get in their feels when someone talks bad about their nation or region. I'm a European myself, and I don't deny that we ain't shit, but I get why some people feel proud of what the EU has achieved, except for being a world power, I guess. Listen, the EU should cozy up to China. That's all I'm saying. And I'm saying this as an American living in the United States of America. While you got the time, petition your politicians to suck Xi Jinping off as hard as they possibly can. Okay? Do not let the Viktor Orbáns of the European nations become the guys that actually make those allegiances. Delta flight flipped. Crazy shit happening in the world. What the fuck? A Delta flight carrying roughly 80 passengers from Minnesota appears to have crash landed at Toronto Pearson Airport. No casualties have been reported as of this time. Numerous photos and videos have released showing passengers safely exiting the plane, which flipped upside down. At least 8 people are injured. Paramedics say, what the hell is, what? What the fuck is happening, bro? How did it flip? Icy conditions, sure, but like, how did it flip over? I guess it landed and then it flipped? Bro, we got to get back to DEI ASAP. Chat, I'm not even joking when I say this. It's DEI time, dude. It's DEI or die, okay? It turns out we needed DEI. Turns out we can't trust white people. Bring back DEI now. Bring it back now. We need it. We need it so bad. We need it so desperately. Okay? I need my pilot to have multiple pronouns. Okay? I need my pilot to have the most pronouns. We have to get it. We have to get it back. I want they, them pilots. Fuck it. I want zer pilots. Okay? That's what I want. I want the entirety of air traffic control to have septum rings. I'm never hiring a clean cut. I am never hiring a clean cut air traffic control person ever again. Okay? Do you have a septum ring? You're in, okay? You have to at least be bisexual to do ATC stuff. Yeah, I want every pilot to be trans, dude. Every single one. This is unacceptable. The planes keep crashing and they will not stop until virtually everyone involved is they them. Okay. Let's get back to Ukraine though, which by the way also is losing its DEI status. I think that's the problem. They cut out the US aid funding. Ukraine is no longer as gay as it was. Ukraine was they them as fuck. And now look at what's going on. Look at what's going on in Ukraine. It's no longer woke. Bring it back. Bring back woke to Ukraine instantly.
Peter?
And as we saw more strikes there in Ukraine from the Russians over the course of the last.
President Zelensky has this weekend rejected a bid by the United States for access to $500 billion of mineral resources in return for further military support or security guarantees. In an interview with the broadcaster NBC, Mr. Zelensky questioned whether minerals in areas currently held by Russia might be handed over to President Putin. Well, Ukraine holds huge deposits of critical elements and minerals, everything from lithium to titanium. It also has sizable coal deposits, as well as oil, gas and uranium. But much of this is in territories that are currently under Russian control. Well, let's speak to Robert Munger, who's the founder of IGA-RAPE, the institute. He joins me now from Munich, where he's been attending that conference. Good to have you here. And talk to me, first of all, about Ukraine's position in the world mineral market. What has it got and why does America want it?
Well, good to be with you. I mean, the first thing to say is that Ukraine is a critical mineral superpower. It's got about 117 of the 120 minerals that are desired by countries around the world, many of which are desired by the United States and the European Union, and has, as you said, an abundance of hydrocarbons, oil and gas, especially coal, but also things like titanium, iron, lithium, rare earths, all minerals that are highly sought after in the rush for the green transition, as well as for aerospace and defense.
Yeah, and they're so crucial in that green transition, of course, particularly for their role in batteries. And we know that that is at the centre of that big row between the US and China. And so Ukraine probably finds itself caught between the two in terms of who has access to it, because if you have access, you have power.
Well, that's right. I mean, we estimated back in 2022 that Ukraine had something in the order of $26 trillion worth of deposits. The big challenge, though, is not only are those not fully developed, but about 20 to 30% of those back in 2022 were in Russian-occupied areas. And so while Ukraine has an abundance of many of these kinds of minerals that are being sought after, especially, as you say, for electric vehicles as well as for defense systems, a lot of these aren't yet developed or are only partially developed. And that was an issue that was actually being addressed before the war started, but the Russian-Ukraine war actually slowed down the auctions that were being planned by the European Union at the time.
And so is it your assessment here that these minerals are being used as a bargaining chip in terms of whether the US will support either militarily or in terms of security guarantees? They're saying, look, give us access to these minerals, then you get our support, and without it, we won't. I mean, is that what it looks like right now?
I would say this is a bit of a long shot for Ukraine. I mean, I think, first of all, there's definitely interest globally and has been interest in a variety of minerals in Ukraine for years. But right now, I think what Ukraine desperately seeks is more economic entanglement with the United States, especially in those areas that are occupied by Russia or those areas that are adjacent, as well as security guarantees so that there's a long-term investment from the United States in Ukraine. But it's going to take hundreds of billions of dollars of investment to really build an industry that's going to be one that the U.S. wants to preserve and protect. So I think Ukraine is really pushing hard right now with the United States to try to come up with some kind of arrangement that provides a satisfactory solution both for its domestic.
I mean, why are they talking like this? Why are they not talking about how this is a clear-cut violation of Ukrainian sovereignty and Ukrainian autonomy? I'm so confused. Why are they doing cold hard analysis? Is this guy pro-Putin too? Is this guy pro-Trump? Perhaps it's because at a certain point you got to have an honest conversation about this. And that it was always about what material resources you can extract from this nation. That's it.
The constituencies, but also security guarantees in the eventual ceasefire and peace deal that we're all hoping will be achieved at some point in the coming months or years.
Robert, it's good to talk to you. Thank you. We will talk about this again, I am sure. But Robert Mugger there, thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank...
Revealed Trump's confidential plan to put Ukraine in a stranglehold. Panic in Kyiv as U.S. president demands higher share of GDP than Germany's First World War reparations. That is... Yeah. Donald Trump's demand for $500 billion payback for Ukraine goes far beyond U.S. control over country's critical minerals. This is, for the record, if people are failing to understand my position on this is gross. But that doesn't change the reality that it is honest. This is honesty in the American intention. If you thought that the Democrats had different opinions on this matter, you are wrong. Okay? Maybe the number wasn't 500 billion. Maybe they wouldn't say it's 500 billion. But I have, like, if you know anything about America's allies, with the exception of fucking Israel, this is how it works always. This is always how it's worked. It doesn't matter who's in charge. We use all of these other countries in the periphery as a cumsock against whoever we consider to be our foreign adversaries. And then we extract natural resources in the process. We extract labor in the process. We maintain control over their political structure in the process. And that's it. It's completely unjustifiable. It's completely unacceptable. But that is the modus operandi. That's my point, at least. That's been my point. Neolib started doing this in the development politics and do the same here for defense politics. Yeah. Why have you turned off my goat, Starmer? Keir Stalin? Hold on. We're going to get back to him in a second.
President Macron for convening us.
I am interested to see how the European leaders move from this point on. Because I suspect from their perspective, if they're being also equally honest about this process, right? They have their own personal ambitions in Ukraine as well, but that's usually just like small fry in comparison to what America's ambitions are in Ukraine, right? They also have genuine fear from Russian retaliation. Why do they have genuine fear from Russian retaliation? This was the case during the Cold War as well, because they're closer in proximity to Russia. Okay? That's an important part of this process. That's an important way to understand the European mindset on Russia's irredentist actions in Ukraine regardless. Because they see that and they think, well, we're in striking distance. America is not. Okay? That's also important to recognize here. But from their perspective, I suspect they look at this bargain and they're like, well, we cut off our energy, which was obviously politically awful for us. It harmed people economically. Now we have to pay more for that energy. Now we're getting it from America as well. And then also, America is not even playing their end of the bargain. They're basically undermining us after causing us to get into this situation. EU holds over $200 billion in frozen Russian assets. They want a seat at the table. That's why they're panicking. Emergency summit in Paris today because Trump is not consulting them. Bro, America's very close to Russia. What do you mean? Yeah, dude, we're not talking about Alaska, okay?